Hello, Philippines, and welcome to the World News Jam right here on DZRJ and RJTV. My name is Lecain, talking about interesting stories going on around the world, and I can't do it without my partner here, Dan Kang. Now, Dan, how you doing, Dan?
Hey, I'm doing okay. Good to see.
So Dan, now we talked to Dan a couple of weeks ago, and Dan was in Pampanga. And then we talked to Dan last week, and he was in Korea. And now we talked to Dan this week, and Dan is in Las Vegas. So let me ask you, Dan, do you have any money left?
That's great. Hardly. Just enough to get by, I think. It's funny because the Border Patrol, the Customs and Border Patrol asked me that same question. Do you have any money with you?
You have money? Show your money. Show me the money. I know those guys at the Border Patrol, they love that show money to make sure that you not only can get in, but you can get out. Which is what they're most concerned about. It's like, welcome to the United States. When are you leaving?
I'm here for the duration of the Predator and the Alpha and BCA pool billiards, what they call the best, the number one experience, the greatest experience in pool in the world here in Las Vegas until March 5th. So I'm here a little while.
I know that tournament very well because people from everywhere, especially in the United States, they all go to play that tournament, not only the professionals, but also the non-professionals like me who go to that tournament to play. But I'm assuming there's a lot of good Filipinos there.
Yeah, there's quite a few. I know, well, a lot of them didn't come because simultaneously there is a tournament, another Manny Pacquiao tournament in General Santos City, Philippines. So, the challenges of getting the visa and all the costs, sometimes it's not worth it for them, so a lot of them stayed in Philippines to play that instead. But yeah, we've got quite a few over here. There's 8,000 plus pool players here in the city right now in Las Vegas. 8,000. Wow. Yeah.
How many tables do you think that they have in that venue to accommodate 8,000 people?
300 plus tables set up, all Predator tables. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. It's amazing, unreal.
I mean, it is amazing, and good luck to all the Filipinos that are there playing now, because we hope, usually in general, a lot of times the Filipinos come somewhere in the they at least make it into the semifinals, if not winning those tournaments.
That's right. I think De Luna is still in. I'm pretty sure. I think he's the last one left, so we'll see.
I'm sorry. Who did you say was still in?
Jeffrey the Bull De Luna.
De Luna.
Yeah, he's still in. Yeah, your favorite.
My favorite player. Yes, my favorite player, because he makes the cue ball fly up in the air every time he breaks. Anyway.
Yeah.
One of my favorite players. And things are going well there for your cryptocurrency. I think that you guys are sponsoring there right out of the Philippines. A whole bunch of guys from the Philippines went there to help sponsor Predator and your new crypto that's coming out.
That's correct. And actually, we are the main sponsors for the Alpha tournament. So Alpha is the crypto coin, and we are launching. It's one of the reasons I so quickly got over here to Las Vegas. My first time back in Vegas in 20 years, in the United States in 13 years. So this is quite of a trip for me.
Well, I know we won't continue on because I know whatever happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. So but unfortunately, we're here doing the news. Me and Dan here do the news every week, and unfortunately for the people in the Ukraine, what stays in Ukraine is still in the Ukraine, because they just celebrated. I don't know if you could call it celebrate, but they just celebrated their 1-year anniversary of the war there in Ukraine, which has been going on there for a little over 365 days. And supposedly, according to what news outlet you are watching, 180,000 Russian military guys are dead, 100,000 Ukrainian military, and 30,000 civilians have lost their lives since this thing started last year. And currently, Dan, there is no end in sight.
Yeah, I mean, an active war having an anniversary is kind of a strange and morbid kind of statement, isn't it?
Do we celebrate or no? We just,
right.
Everybody is hoping for an end to this war, although I currently do not see it. Even your boys there over in China are hoping that this thing ends. They just reiterated their calls for a settlement for peace between the two countries. You know, this comes just as Russia is waving its nuclear nose again, saying it might blow up the whole thing anyway. So I don't, who knows if that's going to happen. But
war economically is usually good, but I think the economic downfalls right now is hurting a lot. Especially with China too. So
exactly, that's exactly what I think, and I think that's why China has come out to speak out this week about the war, because they have been for the last year saying, "Well, we're not going to take sides," even though they seem to be taking Russia's side. But anyway, they came out with this document this week, this 12-point document, and it's their latest attempt to show that they are a neutral peace broker in the war, since they have curled up to Russia in their no limits deal that they made with Russia, 2 months ago. China says the war benefits no one. The world is better off without it, yada, yada, yada. But of course, everybody believes that China has multiple underlying motives of this particular war, because if this thing escalates to a world war, what side is China going to have to take?
Yeah, being a superpower, I mean, one of the strongest superpowers in the world, China is going to have to make some hard decisions. And, there's a lot of grandstanding, of course. But everyone, I think all those countries that will say what they have to say to hopefully end the war, but they will say what they have to say to be on whatever side is more advantageous for them economically. And
absolutely. I mean, China loves money. I mean, we've said that before, not to be stereotypical, but the Chinese love money, and a lot of it comes down to in the way this thing is coming down. You can't just sit back and wait to see who the winner is going to be and then jump on that side. It's not like a Philippine election where you can just sit back and wait till 3 weeks before the end of the election and all of a sudden go, okay, I'm for that guy because he looks like he's going to win. And the West is putting a lot of pressure right now on China as this thing keeps escalating and escalating. And as Putin this week made his big speech where he said, anybody who says the nuclear arms are off the table is wrong. Of course, now it's the Russians who said that the nuclear arms were off the table. However, they always keep bringing that up. But this document that they released this week calling for the end of the war, calling for a peace treaty, it's clearly aimed at the West, criticizing the West, and that security cannot be achieved by expanding military blocs. In other words, pointing the fingers right at NATO. So to say that they are trying to be, in the middle of this and not pick a side, it just seems like that they're saying, well, maybe Russia is a little more right than the West is, and they are, extremely against the sanctions because they say sanctions are not the answer to a problem, and it makes them worsen. And this is a lot because they're worried about themselves. I mean, if they take a strike on Taiwan, the first thing that's going to happen is everybody's going to sanction China.
Sanctions are the solution, isn't it?
I think sanctions are the best way. I mean, of course, Russia does care about sanctions, but Putin does not. He's like, sanction, smaction. I mean, if my people starve to death, hey, as long as I, save face and kill as many Ukrainians as I can, then I'm okay with it.
Yeah, I mean, Russia has already, they've functioned quite effectively without the world. And that's Putin, and his stance is that we never needed the entire world anyway, and so that's one of his messages to the world. But besides the United Nations, I mean, I think the collective of logical nations are a group, collectively getting together and for the end of the war. I mean, what sane country or sane people would promote a war in the first place anyway? So, I mean, sign of the times, and more of it being nowadays being more easily accessible, informatively, of what's really happening with the internet. Of course, it's a different kind of war than we experienced, even 20 years ago, where everything's out there and information is readily available. So
yeah, I mean, whether it's misinformation or real information, I mean, where that's part of the war is the propaganda and how the world falls down on your side. And Russia has been going all out, trying to make its own people believe that what Putin is doing is the right thing, and that in the Ukrainian people want to become Russians, which is part of what his whole thing is like, we are saving them from this horrible Western democracy that they have been pushed upon them and rammed down their throats.
But we're invading because the West has been invading already for years, getting closer and closer and closer to us and our security. So it's kind of like the playground, kind of, you're invading, no, you're invading, no, you're invading, no, you're invading. So.
I mean, what's the fellow's name? Jake Sullivan, the U.S. National Security Advisor for the United States. He came out and said, hey, this war could stop tomorrow. If Russia would just stop shooting at the Ukrainians. I mean, if they just stopped doing this war would be over. Because no one is attacking Russia, not the Ukrainians, not the U.S., not NATO. No one is going after Russia. This is a war of choice, of the choice of Putin. And, the ambassador of Europe said that, if China is really going to be neutral, they need to see this, and they need to, they need to talk to both sides, because right now it seems, according to the ambassador of Europe, that China's just talking to Russia. And he said, if China's really going to have any bearing at all and not just, blah, 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 then they have to start talking to the West and to Russia at the same time if they think that they are going to be the ones to broker a peace deal. Yeah.
I mean, it's a war of the superpowers, really. It just happens to be being played out in, where it's at now.
Yeah, I mean, it's being played out in the Ukraine, but really, I mean, okay, you can say this is a war against Russia and the Ukraine, but really this is a war between the West and China and Russia, everybody trying to get, as I said before, make sure that their currency is the dominant currency.
It's deja vu again. South Korea was the same way. I mean, it was just chess being played on a chessboard, which happened to have been South Korea at the time. Yeah, that war on War of the Superpowers being played. So
I mean, I know what Putin's want. There was a document that was leaked this week. I don't know if you heard about this. Actually, it made the news, I think, on Friday. A document that was released that Putin had a plan to annex Belarus. He's coming after all the previous held parts of the USSR, and they want to. His idea is to recreate the Russian Empire. And poor old Lukashenko. We talk about him more. We kind of make fun of him. He's the president of Belarus, the so-called president of Belarus, although nobody recognizes him as the president except Putin. He needs Putin. If he didn't have Putin, they would have his head on a giant stake outside the Belarusian capital. But he has Putin in his side. But the EU, the US, I think nobody sees him as the legitimate leader of Belarus, but Putin needs him because Putin uses Belarus as a place to launch his planes, which have missiles. And that's, part of what they're, he needs them for hospitals and stuff to take care of the wounded. But he wants to, he wants to take over. The part of the plan, this document that came out this week says part of the plan is to take over Belarus. And the president of Belarus is like, what? I didn't agree to that. So he's starting to worry about his involvement in the war because he doesn't want to give up his country.
He chose the side, didn't he? They chose the side, so
he chose the Russian side, and if you want to trust Putin, but I think that document has worried him and some other countries, Lithuania and some other places, that I think that if Putin could get them back, he would take them back. I think he thought, and I've said this before, a year ago, he thought this war would be over in 30 days.
Yeah.
And he would move on to the next country and move on to the next country until he had the entire USSR empire back in its original form. And then it didn't go that way. Because there's a bunch of other dudes involved called the USA and the EU. And I don't think he expected those guys to jump into this thing.
Yeah. I mean, it was a long time coming, but this isn't a war that just spontaneously happened all of a sudden because of the madman. But it's been a powder keg. It's been building up there. And everybody was worried about the war in the Middle East, and what happened was a bit of a surprise, I think.
I mean, we're looking at North Korea and the Middle East and Taiwan, all these places, and all of a sudden, like, here is the true problem. Joe Biden was over there this week. I don't know if President of the United States was over there in Poland this week, and then he went to the Ukraine, surprise visit to the Ukraine, and he's walking outside in the main square with President Zelensky, and all of a sudden the alarms go off to show you just how crazy it is over there. The alarms go off, and the reason the alarms went off is because a MiG, one of those Russian MiGs, took off from Belarus. And those Russian MiGs have missiles that they can fire directly into the capital of Ukraine in 20 minutes. In 20 minutes, they can hit it with a missile. So that's why those alarms went off right when good old Joe Biden was just walking down the sidewalk.
I don't think they would go that crazy. Even knowing Joe Biden was there, they're not going to take out the POTUS.
Yeah, that would be. That would be not such a smart move, I think, by them, or at the least even trying to shoot at Kiev while the president is there, because they knew he was there. But first thing we would go after, we would sue Russia probably, because we're U.S. So all we do is sue people. We probably sue them because right now, I don't know, Dan. There's some interesting lawsuits going on in the United States, which gets us into our next story of the week here. And I don't know, Dan, if you've ever thought, has anybody ever lied about you to the point where you wanted to sue them for lying about you?
The funny thing is that's a very serious offense in some countries, especially the one I'm at in Korea. I mean, you actually get sued for telling the truth, even.
Yeah,
as crazy as that sounds. Slander is punishable by law, whether it's true or not.
I know. Yeah, I mean, everybody loves to sue for slander in the United States. I mean, Donald Trump is the king, even though we all know it's true. He's suing anyway, just because he can. Yeah. But I know in the Philippines, especially, people are always asking me about that. Can you help me sue this person? My neighbor is saying I slept with many men and I scammed them, and I want to sue them. And, help me to sue them. And I'm like, well, all right. But then I'll ask them a couple questions and realize, wait a minute, they are kind of sleeping with a lot of guys, and they are kind of scamming you.
That's a mentality from the Western culture. I remember, you remember the time when McDonald's served the hot coffee and they got sued for
$900,000, $9 million for $9 million, and they lost. McDonald's lost. Then they appealed. They were on the hook for $9 million for a cup of hot coffee.
Before the Karen, they were the Sues.
And McDonald's is like, it says it right on the label. It's hot. Don't pour it on yourself. That's, So anyway, they took that. But the problem right now is in the United States, Fox News is being sued for $1.6 billion for lying. And it may seem kind of like a joke because everybody goes, yeah, Fox News lies all the time. They lie all the time. They always.
I mean, I don't even know what news, whether it be Fox or MSNBC or anybody that doesn't lie.
I know they lie. They stretch the truth according to, we believe it's possible that, it could be that, we heard that. But, here's the thing that Dominion Voting is saying. Now, Dominion Voting are the people that make the voting machines in the United States, and they are the ones that were doing the 2020 election between Joe Biden and Donald Trump. And so when the thing was over, Donald Trump said, oh, no, I was cheated. They stole votes from me. And so all these lawyers, these crazy lawyers that Trump had, were coming out and saying, well, it's Dominion Voting. They set it up for Biden to win. They made it so if you put in a vote for Trump, it would automatically switch the vote to Biden. And they came up with all these outlandish how they did it. And it was just insane. And so Fox News was like, yeah, you hear that? Dominion Voting. They stole the election from Donald Trump. Well, they investigated this to the hilt, and there is absolutely zero evidence that any votes were ever changed with the voting machines that Dominion puts out. And so Dominion's like, all right, listen, you've said this stuff about us. Give us $1.6 billion and we'll say okay.
Yeah. I mean, in Spider-Man where they have the, what's his name? The editor-in-chief of the newspaper where he goes, okay, take it, go with it. That's the picture I get when I see, those kind of things. Dominion Voting, okay, run with it. Let's run it. Just,
go with it. And ordinarily, I would say, you know what, Dominion, you're never going to win this lawsuit because the bar is really high to prove. You have to prove that they purposely lied and that, it cost you, millions of dollars, whatever. So it looked like it was a very, one of these lawsuits that will come down to the wire and then they'll make some kind of settlement until this week. This week, all of a sudden, some emails and some texts popped out that Fox knew all along that they were lying. They knew it, and they did it anyway because it was going to get them ratings.
Of course, it's doubling down, as we call it, right? They knew it, but they're gonna. I mean, is that something that's surprising for any news nowadays? News agency.
I mean, there was emails that they found that the Fox News were calling Trump's lawyers like ludicrous and crazy and nuts. And none of this is like, I said, how can we be, and there was people from Fox going, hey, you know what? We probably shouldn't put this on because it's not true. And people like Tucker Carlson and Sean Hannity were like, we're putting it on because, this is what keeps people glued to television. It keeps them.
Lies sell better than the truth. Lies sell better than the truth.
And you know what? Part of it has to do with anger. We love what makes us angry.
That's right.
And I've talked about this before. Is we're watching TV, and the more angry it makes us, the more we watch it. And there's been studies done on this. There's been studies done on this where people have, I even did it accidentally one time. I'm like watching something from Fox. And it's talking about the big lie and how it's, all true and all this kind of stuff. And then, the next day I get another thing in my feed that says the same thing. And then something else that says, QAnon. And all of a sudden it's putting things into my feed that are making me angry.
No.
And I keep looking at them. Because it makes me angry.
The outrage is a dumpster fire that never goes out. It just keeps going.
It's incredible how Fox was able to, even now, after it's already been uncovered and they've already had all these the government has already investigated and they had all these hearings and so forth, because of people like Fox and the things that they have said, people still believe all these things that these, crazy lawyers said, to the point where they decided to, take up arms against the government. and try and kill Congress people because they stole the election. And they're saying this and knowing that it's not true because they know it's going to make people angry. And, I just, one more point. There was a study that came out this week that, is studying, here we go, we're in America, but this is the world over. But in America, they did a study and they found that more than 50% of college students will not share their dorm room with somebody of the opposing party.
Yeah, identity politics is what is destroying, what we knew as the free democracy of the free world.
But it makes us so angry. And I just want to get your comment on that. I read the whole study, and it's a long study. I'm not going to go through it all, but there was one part of it that I just thought was fascinating. And that was, in the United States, we have Democrats and Republicans, that 15% of Republicans and 20% of Democrats think that it would be good if a lot of people on the other side just died.
Wow.
They just it would make life so much easier if they would just die.
I've experienced a lot of that in social media where the lifelong friends are being separated over the identity politics. It's happened, constantly, and it's a sad tragedy, really, that it's gotten to that point.
I have to say this with a grain of salt. Social media has been a perpetrator of this. And, this week, and, I'm not going to talk about a lot of this, internal Philippine stuff, but this week was the EDSA anniversary. And a lot of people, still, there's people that believe that what happened back in the 80s never happened. And it makes the other people that were there, people that were part of it, angry. And I was reading a lot of comments on Facebook on this and just how angry people are because there's so many other people, especially young people in the Philippines, that deny that any of this has ever happened. And, it's this kind of divide that has come down in many countries. It's just the United States. We just hope the other side just dies. But it's just, it's perpetrated by, and unfortunately in the Philippines, TikTok.
Yeah.
TikTok death.
The TikTok vaccine is what we need.
But, we need a vaccine against anger. But, speaking of someone who doesn't seem to be angry at all is Kim Jong-un. Kim Jong-un is in the news again. Yeah. And I know, Kim Jong-un. He's right there. He's your neighbor.
Sure.
He was all smiles this week because they had a big parade there in North Korea, and he was smiling and waving because it was the single largest parade in North Korea anyway, of his ballistic missiles. And there was a bunch of them, and they were gorgeous. Beautiful, very shined up, very nice decals on each one of them.
Yeah.
It was super nice.
On a missile.
It's very important to get your decals right, and North Korea's got some great decals on their ballistic missiles. Now, Dan, North Korea also decided to shoot one of those missiles into toward Japan this week. I think it was actually last week. So Kim Jong-un is all smiles.
Again, well, how many times a year does that happen? The parade of missiles.
He loves doing that. He loves those parades. Honestly, I would love to go to a North Korean missile parade because if you watch the parade, it's not just the missiles. They dance and do all these colorful things, with flyers and flags and stuff.
Right? Attending the big missile parade.
I would love to go see that missile parade. The only problem would be getting out of the country. Sometimes they don't let Americans out of the country. They let us in, but not out. But one thing that was very more exciting, I think, than the missiles of North Korea this week was that Kim Jong-un showed us his daughter.
Yeah.
𝗡𝗲𝘄𝘀.
Sure. Yeah. I'm sure.
Did you know he had a daughter? Did you know that daughter existed?
Actually, there are many offsprings that he has, but the one that he's focusing on, I suppose, is from his wife and not his 900 mistresses and concubines.
Yeah, I mean, his sister made some interesting comments this week, but but people think because this 9-year-old daughter of his, he brought her out during the parade, showed her around, had the cameras, she was right next to him the whole time. And then they were on television and they were at other places. And then there was a postage stamp that came out. There was a postage stamp that came out with him and his daughter on the postage stamp.
Yeah.
So, if you want to mail a letter, you can see, Jewin. And he also made it a law, I believe it was this week, that no one else in the country can be named Jewin.
Wow. I didn't know that. That's interesting information.
I mean, I get these things. I get these news items. Who knows if they're true because it's from North Korea. But that's what they said, that he made a law that if your kid is named Jewin, you need to change your kid's name or if your name is Jewin, you need to figure this out, get your IDs changed because it is now against the law to have the same name as his daughter, who a lot of people believe that Kim Jong-un might be sicker than we thought and that he is trying to get his daughter Jewin in line to be his successor. Put
her in danger.
I mean, who knows what he's thinking? But I mean,
because his sister is really spooky. His sister has really, she's very dominant.
She's a strange bird.
Very spooky.
She came out this week and spoke on Korean television saying that the reason that the North Koreans have to shoot these missiles into the sea and they have to test these things and they probably will have to test a nuclear weapon is because of the U.S. It's because the U.S. is like doing all their things with South Korea and they're running all these drills and so forth. And then the U.S. comes out and says, well, the only reason we're running these drills is because you keep shooting missiles into the ocean. Stop doing that. We wouldn't run all these drills. So, but she made a very kind of ominous speech this week that they're going to continue this. And I would say probably in the next, year or so, they're going to do another nuclear test.
Yeah, I mean, like every message that comes from her publicly to the world is all about doom and, death and doom and death. And she's really a spooky lady. So.
I just can't imagine being around that, being a fly on the wall in that family's house.
What a crazy cage mama that would make.
It's interesting stuff. But anyway, Jewin, do not name your child Jewin because it is against, if you ever go to North Korea, that would be against the law. Speaking of things that are against the law, I don't know if it's against the law, but, you just brought up a little earlier, Dan, the Middle East. And the news is back in the Middle East again as Israel has raided Palestine again. Palestinians were killed this week in the West Bank. They were looking for 3 militants who they believe were going to carry out an attack on Israel. So they surrounded a building that they thought that they would be in. And when they said, come out, nobody came out. So they riddled that building with bullets and bombs and all kinds of explosives.
They treated it like a Chinese spy balloon.
It was like a Chinese spy balloon. They just shot missiles at it. Anyway, the thing that's really weird about this, and the reason that I bring this up is because they did it in the daytime, in the middle of a place with a lot of people. And this is why, and when the Israelis come in and they do this kind of thing, especially the Palestinians, then Israelis come out in the street and they start throwing bottles and rocks at the Israeli soldiers. And then the thing gets escalated. And before you know, it is just a horrible scene. And a lot of people got injured. There's a story of a young nurse that went to the hospital to see if he could help out. And he said, can I help with these 2 patients here? And the doctor said, no, they are dead. And he went in and looked at one of the patients and it was his father. I mean, there are some horrific stories that are coming out. And, here again, talk about peace in Ukraine, peace in the Middle East. I mean, there is no light at the end of the tunnel.
Sure.
No light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, everybody says that they're going to fix it. The Palestinian leaders say, we will protect you. The people in Palestine do not believe that anymore. They do not believe that Palestine is going to be able to protect them. They're always saying, only God and us can protect us. So, that's where we're at.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of skirmishes going on in Africa, and whatever is sellable in the media is what's the flavor, the jour of the day. I think. Yeah.
I don't know what to say anymore about what's the conflict between the Israelis and the Palestinians, because even though we think we are, okay, all right, I think we're in a good spot. We're in a good spot. And then, a week later, we're not at that good spot anymore.
Yeah.
And this week, 11 Palestinians died.
Yeah.
At the hands of Israeli soldiers right there in broad daylight for everyone to film and see and post. And so I think, you talk about these three guys that are planning attacks against Israel. Guess how many are planning attacks against Israel today? Probably a lot more than three.
Yeah.
Anyway, speaking of horrific things in the world, do you know '𝗡𝗄𝘄𝘀?
𝗡𝗄𝘄𝘀, yeah.
She's a model and an influencer and all this kind of stuff. She's beautiful, by the way. I've seen a picture of her. She has been pronounced dead this week. And they found parts of her body, a meat slicer, an electric saw, and a meat grinder in a rental unit in Hong Kong that was set up as a butchery site. Now, this happened this week, and interesting enough, Dan, they have not released the cause of death.
Right, crazy. Dismemberment.
I don't know if that's funny or not, but they said, well, we have not released the cause of death yet. They are, just in case anybody that doesn't know, she's an international model. She's been on TV. She was part of the big fashion show that happened in Paris recently. She's very big star there, and so they found her in Singapore, and they believe it was her ex-husband. And they ex-husband
father. I think the ex-husband father, they believe, is the mastermind or the initial aggressor or something like that. I think, right? And so that was correct.
They believe it's the father. The father, the mother, the brother are all arrested because they had a squabble about a piece of about a condo or something. It's something to do with money. They were having a squabble about that, and so the brother had picked her up to go pick up her daughter from school, and she never turned up at the school. And she went missing, and they never found her. And then they started finding her, but like one piece at a time.
Yeah, in pots and pans, no less. That was very gruesome.
In fact, if I read the story correctly, when they came into the rental unit, there were pots of stew on the cooker, and there were pieces of her in the stew.
That's right. That's what I read as well. That's kind of gruesome, isn't it?
Well, I mean, they're cooking Abby. It's a horrible. I mean, the fact of what people will do because of money, and that it could be escalate to the point where, let's kidnap her, chop her. They supposedly set up this rental unit just to kill her, just to dispose of the body. And they found they're scombing the area now looking for parts. But what they found in the rental unit was just, if you read the article, which I would say maybe you shouldn't read it, they found her cooking in the stew.
Yeah. No hands and feet still. I think those are the parts they are missing, the hands and the feet.
They are looking. They're scouring the surrounding area to see if they can find other parts.
Those type of crimes of passion and personal crimes are much more gruesome than just random killings, right?
I mean, you look at the horror of war, and then you hear about what an ex-husband's father did to his daughter. It's just
unreal.
It's just worse than anything. But
They're capable of.
But speaking of body parts, I wanted to get into technology this week a little bit because in China, there was something that I saw come across the news this week, and I just had to talk about it because, Dan, I don't know if you've ever had any long-distance relationships, but I have. And long-distance relationships are very difficult. So they're always trying to come up with a way to make it better to have a long-distance relationship.
Never.
So this company in China has developed the remote kiss. And what it does is it's a silicone thing of lip, which a person can control over the internet. So it's very simple to use. You plug it into your phone. It fits into the back of your phone. And then you kiss it. You kiss the lips on the phone. And then the lips on her phone make the movements, and the temperature and there's all kinds of, the pressure, everything is replicated on the other side. So you can make out with her on the other side, but not be with her. This is a game changer, Dan.
Send me the link to that, would you? I made a joke to somebody because I'm in the desert. My lips are chapped. I made a joke with somebody of interest here in Las Vegas. Her name starts with an E. And I told her I couldn't kiss her because my lips are kind of chapped up. But this would work. This could work.
It's the temperature and the movement and the pressure that you put on it is what she feels on the other side. And it is $41. Not too bad. That's
cheaper than a breakfast lunch here in Las Vegas. A sandwich and a Coke is about $41.
So you can get a remote kiss for cheaper than breakfast. When they put it out, they had in the first week 105 million likes on Twitter.
Wow. I mean, it's pretty soon it'll be 100 million kisses.
Yeah, I know. I mean, this is not to be confused with the device that came out of Malaysia last year, the 𝗡𝗄𝘀, which is not the same thing. A lot of people thought it was the same thing, but it's not. But anyway, this could help out your long-distance relationship. Get those things out of China. Now, Dan, in medicine, there was also an interesting story that came out this week, and I wanted to get your take on this because we love to do a medical study every week. They did this study they started it in 1941. Keeping records, and they kept records all the way to 2021, and they found that a man's manhood has grown over the past 30 years. So,
who does that study? Who does that kind of study? Where does that study come from? Okay, go ahead.
Who's the measurer? That's what I want to know. But anyway, they did it with 55,761 males over 80 years.
Wow.
They've been checking guys' junk in the trunk there. And they said that over the last 30 years, that there has been a growth spurt in men over time. Now, I know a lot of you would say, is this self-check? Because if it's self-check, there's mostly a lot of lying. And it turns out this is not a self-check. These guys were all studied by medical people and all measured by scientists. And while there is no increase or decrease in the soft side of man, the more excited version of man has gone from 12.3 centimeters previously to 15.2 centimeters now as of today.
Who does that study? I mean, where does that study come from? 80 years?
Yeah, actually, it's a long list of all the universities that have been involved in this study. So I wasn't gonna go through and read all of them because I can't tell which one is the main one. But there's been a whole bunch of them. It's been passed around. But the question that I wanted to find out was why, and there is a reason why. And that this is what they proved. This came out in the World Medical Science Journal this week. So this is not just some joke fly-by-night thing. This is in the World Medical Journal. that exposures to certain chemicals that we've had in the last 30 years that we did not have before, certain pesticides, certain hygiene products, certain things that we are all are in all our lives now all the time. They believe that that is the reason why this is happening, that it's not just evolution, that these endocrine disrupting chemicals that are in our daily lives now are the reasons why, the environment, our diet, certain things are now changing our body.
Well, we need to pair that study with the number of ED.
I know. Yeah.
That men suffer from. So size doesn't matter as long as you don't know how to, all that whole female thing.
But I did write down a quote from one of the scientists here that was part of this study, and I tried to read the whole thing, but it's really long. But it says, as we change our body's constitution, that also affects our hormonal milieu, which I had never even heard that word before. Chemical exposure has been posted as a cause for boys and girls going through puberty earlier than normal, which can affect the genital development and its size, especially in men. The team that put the final report out noted that other factors such as techniques for measuring length, temperature, and arousal state of the breastmen could affect the results. However, they believe this whole study that they need to warrant further study in this because they want to release another paper on male reproductive health and how we are whether becoming, because supposedly right now, we did a story on this a couple of months ago, that males are becoming less reproductive now.
There's somewhere in this world, there's a group of women wondering if that's actually true or not, and they want to know where those men are at.
Where are those guys who are 15.2 centimeters opposed to 12.3? But it does make sense. It makes, unfortunately, it does make sense to me that there might be something that we are doing that's different than we did, something that it would have to be in the 90s. It started in the 90s that there's something that we are exposed to. And that, if you want to go and read it, it's quite involved and explains a lot of this much better than I am. But, I'm mostly reporting on it because I think it's hilarious. But it's a very serious study.
So. That seriously. So I think, but yeah, okay. I guess that's been, always the age-old question as well. Does size matter? Well,
size matter, and it turns out it really does matter, especially in. But I mean, I can read all this stuff that I wrote about it here. But the sperm count, which has been dwindling as we get in the future. So, a lot of scientists are looking into this now and how to make men more reproductive because, as we talked about, I think it was last week or week before last, the world is getting smaller.
I was just going to say, we just talked about the population decrease.
Yeah, the population decrease even in the Philippines, which is hard to believe, but especially in places like, China and the U.S. and Japan, and especially in Russia, where people are having less and less children.
The male genitalia grows, population doesn't grow.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that interesting? That's fascinating, isn't it? I am fascinated with the fact that I can kiss a girl from across the world, and that, of course, I would not be in that group would have the bigger, because I was born much before that, before those children took place. But anyway, in science this week, a very interesting story, which I love to talk about science. They have discovered a new planet, Dan, and you'll never guess what the name of this new planet is.
Oh no, what is that?
It's TOI 52005b. Of course.
That's my password for my. Wait, how did they know? That's my password for my TikTok.
It's funny you should say. I mean, we'll get back to the story, whatever. But I read a story the most popular passwords in the world, and you know what the most popular password in the world is that most people use? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Okay, mine is incorrect. My password is INCORRECT because every time I put the wrong password in, it says your password is incorrect. So it tells me what my password is.
That's pretty good. So now you can access all of Dan Kang's bank accounts. Anyway, so there is a new planet that they have discovered, and they're always discovering stuff out in space. It's no big deal, but this particular planet is of interest, and they have nicknamed it, even though it is called 𝗡𝗲𝘄𝘀. They have a nickname for it called the Forbidden Planet. And the reason is because, they're always finding stuff. It's a big planet. It is huge. It is roughly the size of Jupiter. And you're like, well, okay, so it's the size of Jupiter. But here's the thing. It was spotted by TESS. And we've talked about TESS here on the show a bunch of times. That's the NASA Transiting Exoplanet Survey Satellite. I just bring that up anytime I have. But anyway, they started hunting for planets back in 2018. And they look at light coming from stars and the dips in the light, and that suggests whether there are planets around that star. Anyway, this red dwarf star, which is about 40% the size of our sun, has this planet, 𝗡𝗲𝘄𝘀 circling it. And it shouldn't be there because red dwarfs don't have planets that big circling them, especially that big. So that's why scientists are going crazy.
That's the Klingon planet. It's the hidden, because, they have that stealth technology they've been hiding all this time.
Too big. Just like men now, boys growing up now, it's too big. And they said it's like Jupiter is like a pea going around a grapefruit, whereas this planet is like a pea going around a lemon. And that should not exist in our universe. We should not have, according to the way planets are formed in our universe, the way this, our scientists who know everything about space are formed, we should not have planets that big going around a red dwarf sun.
You sure that's not a spy balloon?
It is not a spy balloon, Dan. I know how much you love to talk about the spy balloons. But no, it is not. They saw this planet. They're discovering new stuff all the time. They said, 2 weeks ago, that there is no way that in our lifetimes we will ever see aliens because it just takes too long from any planet that it could possibly, have life on to get here. But then, we don't know what kind of technology they have. So,
yeah. Well, they said the same thing about flying cars, and we already have that.
Yeah, I mean, think about 30 years ago, we thought there would be, hey, we expected 2023. When you were hanging out in the 1980s, Dan, didn't you think, oh man, 2023, we're going to have, flying cars, and we're going to have, women robots that we can have as girlfriends. We thought all these things were going to happen, and it really hasn't gotten to that point. Male
genitalia growing has happened, though.
There's been some upsides, but in any case, so but I just found it interesting when this came out, because I'm always trying to look at the stuff that's going on that they're discovering in space, and the things that they're discovering in our own planet, which they are constantly finding new discoveries. They're constantly finding new burial sites, which they found a new one this week as well. Anyway, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that next week when we got more time. But I just think that I hope, Dan, in my lifetime, that we get to see at least one space alien. Just, before I die, I want to see a space alien.
It might be among us already.
I know. If you're a space alien and you're watching the World News Jam with Eric Lecain and Dan Kang, give us a call. Make a comment. We would love to have you on the show. I mean, I know some of my friends look like space aliens, but I don't think they are.
Do not be alarmed about our genitalia growing. So please give us a call. Do not be alarmed.
Yes, if you have bought one of the remote kisses and you would like to test it here on our show, Dan and I would be happy. Because now with the remote kiss, I guess you could kiss a guy and it would be okay. Yeah. Maybe.
But I can't understand. Now you're going to see not everybody looking at their phone like this walking down the street. Everyone's going to have a phone plastered to their mouth walking down the street.
I mean, it's going to be the next thing. It's going to be the next thing when you have a little thing that you attach to your phone, and it's the lips talking. It's talking in the same thing, or it's a face. It's a face of the person, and it's talking to you. I mean, I can see this happening very soon. But because we all want to have relationships where the person's not really there all the time. So it would be a great thing, I think, to have. I'm for $41. I'm thinking about getting one myself. But on that note, Dan, in fact, we should have a big giveaway here on the show next week if we can, with the remote kiss.
Absolutely, buy it with Alpha.
So, but for me, Eric Lecain and Dan Kang, who is in Las Vegas, me, who is currently actually in Cebu this week, where it's very hot. We are finishing up our show here. Thank you so much for joining us here on the World News Jam on DZRJ and RJTV. So for me, again, Eric Lecain and Dan Kang, see you next time, Dan, hopefully back over here in Asia.
Thank you.
And everybody, please be safe out there. And me and Dan will see you next week.